So, Zach, Indiana, some early spring kind of news, rumblings going on with them. Curt Cignetti gave Nick Marsh what he called a wake-up call about his gold shoes. Caught that in the press conference, and that was trending on Twitter kind of quite a bit. So we can talk about that if you want. Or Cignetti also said, I feel like we probably have more work to do with this group than the first two teams, which pretty accurate with not having as many players from James Madison and stuff like that. We are not a podcast that says it was all James Madison players, as much as they were James Madison players. It's not all James Madison players that did stuff for him. They were very good, and Curt Cignetti's done a great job of developing his transfers, but they do have less. No Aiden Fisher on this team, guys like that were leaders for him. They are gone. And then finally, this wasn't even Indiana saying anything. Sonny Dykes, TCU head coach, previous head coach of Josh Hoover, takes a shot at Josh Hoover. Zach, I want to get your thoughts on if this was intentional or if I'm reading into this too much. Where would you like to start here with these three things?
So let me just ask this first about Sonny Dykes. Has anyone actually seen the whole video of like what they were talking about? Because I went and looked, and all I could find is the 10-second clip, and then everybody kind of linked it and was like, "Oh, like Sonny Dykes is throwing shade at his quarterback," and I'm like, maybe, but I would like to actually see the whole clip with the question he's being asked, and I could not find it.
Yeah, they put the clip here on Twitter, the college transfer portal, college FB portal there. I guess they put it there on Twitter. Again, we can't show videos of this stuff anymore because for whatever reason we get a copyright from stuff, which is really annoying for like a 10-second video clip. But anyway, here's the quote. It says, I mean, I think you know that. Look, numbers are numbers and stats are stats. And I think you look for us. And I think Josh started 31 games here as a quarterback, and we turned the ball over 40. And then he pauses. He says he turned the ball over 42 times in those 31 starts. Now, I'm with you. There could be a little bit of was it misconstrued, stuff like that. But it seems pretty intentional to me when he says we turned the ball over 40, and then he pauses and he says he turned the ball over 42 times in those 31 starts. As much as I do agree, context does need to be there, I also don't think that this is a situation where it's you don't typically correct that part very very quickly. What are your thoughts?
Yeah. So, and Tom Fornelli, I think, put this well. Sonny Dykes,
and he's the one that wrote this article too.
Yeah. So credit to Fornelli. He's awesome. Huge Illinois fan. So, representing the Big Ten. I think that Sonny Dykes is not wrong. Also, be the adult. That's my thought. Okay, cool. You lost your quarterback. That's sad. And I get why there might be sour grapes, but you're talking up this kid every year that he's with you, and then he leaves to go to a guy who just made Fernando Mendoza the number 1 overall pick, or is going to make him the number 1 overall pick, and won a national championship. I get that it stinks, but also be the adult.
Well, and yes, I totally agree. Be the adult. And also, be smart. I don't know. Yeah. I'm not trying to say that Sonny Dykes is not smart here, but also you really want to go up against final form of your quarterback against Curt Cignetti. Don't get me wrong. Yes, Sonny Dykes had what was his name? Max, the Heisman finalist. They had Max Duggar, something.
Duggar. I think it was Duggar.
He had him in the Heisman, conversation and everything, and he was there. So don't get me wrong, he had that happen the year that they went to the national championship. But Curt Cignetti, I mean, I hate that this is doing this right here. We're gonna go back over here because I don't know why it's twitching out right there. As far as I'm concerned, it's Sonny, I think Curt Cignetti's got a much better track record with quarterbacks here. So you want to put it on Josh Hoover, that's fine, but I'm going to venture to say if Josh Hoover throws as many interceptions at Indiana that he did at TCU, it's not going to be because he was the same player he was at TCU. It's going to be because he throws 2 or 3 as many passes as he did at TCU. As far as I'm concerned, Josh Hoover is going to have a major jump in his years. He's going to be the Heisman quarterback and stuff like Fernando Mendoza is. No, I'm not putting that on him. I have no idea. We'll see what happens, but I definitely don't think he's going to be the same quarterback that he was at TCU because Curt Cignetti is just too good of a head coach and a quarterback, guru to let that happen.
Yeah. Well, and I think too that, we've had some folks in the comments saying if Hoover's not going to be Fernando Mendoza, that he's not going to be that. And I don't think we're saying that he's going to be.
No, I don't think he needs to be.
Yeah, I agree. But I do think you look at what Hoover has around him this year versus what he had around him against TCU. I mean, you've got Becker, you've got Nick Marsh. I mean, my goodness, that wide receiver room is stacked beyond those two guys. Their offensive line, I think 4 out of 5 are coming back. They just are. They're going to be a force, and it's similar in some ways. I like the way I think about it is you have Curtis Rourke, who was great for them, like great 2 years ago with a torn ACL, no less. And then you have Mendoza. And I would argue that Hoover is probably in the middle of those two. And like, let's not forget that Rourke got them to the playoffs. And I think Hoover's probably he's probably a better prospect at least. And then now you're getting coaching from the best coaching staff in America. So I think if you're looking at this from the perspective of, it's a massive criticism on Josh Hoover, like, yes, like I don't love the interception ratio. I don't love his turnover rate. Although I will say he progressed from 12 fumbles to 4 from 2024 to 2025. He did throw a couple more picks this year, but he also threw like 450 passes or something. I think it's 425, something like that. But I think the main thing is I think he's improving from year to year. He's been given more responsibility, but he's got work to do, right? It still doesn't, I don't think it gives Dykes the right to not be cordial here. Like, I get that you feel like you got left at the altar. I understand that. But like, you're not the college kid. So I just come back to that. Like, you're not wrong. I think there are things in Josh Hoover's game that you need to like realize he's not the next, like he may not be the next Fernando Mendoza. He doesn't need to be, but he might not be. But still, like, why are you doing this?
Yeah, I totally agree. And at the end of the day, I think you can see which quarterback or which coaches are going to progress with the transfer portal and everything else, and those who are going to, just completely flop with this. And I'm not saying Sonny Dykes is going to completely flop, but I do think that he is going to very much so struggle in the transfer portal era with losing players and stuff like that.
Well, and John Jacobs makes a really good point. When Dykes disparages the quarterback, do other QBs will they want to play for him? Like, yeah, like if people leave and you trash them to the net, like where it blows up like this, like you break trust.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, and right now, the 3 most proven QB developers in college football are all in the Big Ten. It's Ryan Day, Curt Cignetti, in no particular order. Ryan Day, Curt Cignetti, and Lincoln Riley. I mean, you want to be a great quarterback, go to one of those 3 schools. If you are a great quarterback, go to Miami because they will just slot you in and let you do everything. They don't necessarily develop you. But if you want to be a great quarterback, work on your game and improve, you go to one of those 3 schools, and all 3 of those have been proven to be excellent schools to either win a Heisman Trophy or win a national championship. Got a lot of hardware at those schools. So, all right. Next thing here we can get to is Curt Cignetti's quote. I thought this was interesting. I'm curious what you think of it, Zach. He said, so this is important, and he's talking about the new freshmen and transfers if they've met Indiana standard. Said, so this is important. I feel like we probably have more work to do with this group than the first two teams, simply because there's so many that we don't have 1 or 2 or 3 year relationship with, whereas even the first year, there were quite a few we knew very well. But they're trained well. The reports have all been good. I'm not sounding alarm bells or concerns or anything like that. Obviously, Curt Cignetti's done this plenty of times with transfers and everything. But did you find this quote as interesting as I did, Zach?
Yeah, it's a helpful check because while I think we have said, oh, what Cignetti and their staff has done, it has been nothing short of remarkable. Part of the reason why it was so remarkable is you brought in guys who not only knew the system, but could teach the system because they'd been there at JMU 2, 3, maybe even 4 years. And now you still have some guys who've been there for a while, but now you're starting to see like the next wave. And the big question is, do these new players or do these older guard players, can they pass this down as well as guys like Elijah Surratt, guys like Aiden Fisher? Like, can they pass this down in the same way? And I think it is a question mark. I mean, someone asked, I think Mello asked in the chat, like, is this really the best coaching staff in America? They are, because of the continuity. Like, that's one of the big reasons why they are the best coaching staff. They are very familiar with each other. But they also had the advantage of having a lot of players who were very familiar with them, how they worked, how they structure things, their terminology, the way they practice. And now all of a sudden, like, you're starting to see more turnover because people graduate. And so it's a question, right? It's not, I don't think it's a question. I don't think it sounds alarm bells like you said, but like it is a different hurdle than they've had the past couple years.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things to me is that you've seen Curt Cignetti go through the kind of what's the word I'm looking for? The rough patches the past 2 seasons, the first 3 games. And when I say rough patches, it's obviously like they won these first few games, but Curt Cignetti really does treat those first 2 or 3 games kind of as like preseason games. I mean, it was 27-14 against Old Dominion. That red zone offense did not look super polished. By the end of the season, Fernando Mendoza, he looks very, very comfortable in the red zone and the way things are working there. So it's just the team continues to develop, goes through it all, and this is just the starting point right now with it all. So even if it is all that much different than the past 2 or 3 seasons, like, yeah, it's going to be different because he's not going to have the same guys, but was also probably different when he got to Elon. It was also probably different when he got to James Madison. Like, he didn't just take his guys with him everywhere he goes. Now, this is Big Ten football. It's the best conference in college football, and you're facing, some of the best teams, best coaching staffs and everything. I don't know who I'm not necessarily saying that Indiana has the best coaching staff, but I think they've done the best job coaching the past 2 years from what we've seen with the talent level they've had and everything else. So if that makes you the best coaching staff, sure. But the way I look at it, this is just one more challenge Curt Cignetti has in front of him. But every time he sees a challenge, he meets it, and he seems to succeed. So I got little to no concern. So
that's fair.
And kind of last thing here that kind of does speak to the standard that Curt Cignetti is building and everything, and this one is kind of more funny than anything else. Curt Cignetti just kind of went off the cuff. He wasn't necessarily asked about Nick Marsh's gold shoes or anything, but he was just asked about Nick Marsh and how things are going. And he said, I didn't love those gold shoes that Nick Marsh came out in today, Curt Cignetti said when he spoke to the media about practice. Quote, he learned what getting your ass ripped is all about. I don't know if that happened to him very often at Michigan State. Ouch. A little bit of a shot there at Michigan State. That was before practice started. That was a wake-up call. Ended quote there. So, Zach, I do not think I'd want to be wearing gold shoes around Curt Cignetti and get the wake-up call. Would you?
No, I don't. And this is why the concern level should be minimal. Because Curt Cignetti's not going to like just start shrinking back. Like he knows who he is.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's the thing I've appreciated most about him is like, whereas I think Ryan Day has had to find himself a little bit of like who he is as a coach. Curt Cignetti knows who he is, and he knows you're not going to wear gold shoes to his practices. And he's going to rip you for it if you do. And I think that's part of why he is so successful is, and that's why I'm like the previous thing that we talked about with the continuity with the players. Am I concerned? Yeah, I'm probably a little bit more concerned than you are, but if you're like 1% concerned, I'm like 7% concerned.
Yeah.
Because he still knows who he is and he still knows how to get the best out of his players. And unlike some coaches who like they're tryhards and they're like, oh, I'm going to rip him for being like for having gold shoes. Like Cignetti's genuine about it. Like he is no nonsense. And he's like, we're about process and we're about winning. Get with the program. So I love it. Like Nick Marsh has all the talent in the world. And you see that at the end of the article too. Like he's working hard. So like, this is not just a quote to be like, oh no, like what's going on with Nick Marsh? He's doing great from all intents and purposes in practice, but he was made it as an example, and great coaches do that to motivate their best players. So I love it.
To me, it feels like there was probably like a joking about it afterward. Maybe not like a joking, but like an understanding of like comedic stuff about it afterward. I don't think that Cignetti would come to and say this at the press conference if, he felt like there was real tension between him and Marsh because of it. Maybe there was. And if that was the case, probably, I don't think it would be the best idea to mention it. But as far as I'm concerned, Curt Cignetti, this is just one of the comical ways he kind of shows of, the standard is the standard. And I think that phrase is true in like a handful of programs in college football right now. I think that Nebraska is trying to get there with Matt Rhule. I've heard that be talked about, and I think that's a good goal for them to get there with that. But the truth is there's only a handful of programs that are that way. Indiana's that way. Ohio State's that way. I think Georgia on the field is that way. I don't know about Georgia off the field with their driving. I think they probably need to have a little bit more of the standard is the standard conversation there. But overall, like I think those are probably the three programs that I would say are the most, you have to meet the standard if you want to be here type of situation. Maybe Oregon too. I think USC is getting much closer to that than they were before. I think that Lincoln Riley is really developing as a coach more into that than he has been. I don't know. Am I missing any other programs that you feel like are close to that or there?
I
think Brett Bielema has that to a certain extent.
Yeah, but it's not the same. It's not the same level for sure.
I think Iowa has it in their own kind of way. Like Kirk Ferentz doesn't come off that way, but I think they have that in a certain kind of way. Trying to think. I think Kyle Whittingham's going to be that way in Michigan.
Oh yeah. He's no nonsense. I wanted to get to this comment because Billy, I get setting the tone, but why mention it in a presser? It's a good question, and I would just actually go back to a former Ohio State coach who did it and a former Alabama coach who did it. Urban Meyer did this all the time, and so did Nick Saban, where if he knew there was a player he needed to motivate, he was not afraid to call them out publicly. And Nick Saban did it too, but the way they did it is they knew they could. And they would actually take time to encourage different players that they knew couldn't handle that type of criticism. They knew their players, and they knew what would motivate who. And so, like, I would hate getting chewed out in public. Like, don't do that to me. JR, never do that to me. Like, if I screw up on this podcast.
We'll end the stream before that happens. I'm just joking.
Okay. But it's what makes the great coaches great is it's not just about X's and O's. It's about knowing how to expertly motivate different players. And I mean, you hear about it with Phil Jackson and Michael Jordan all the time. Like Phil Jackson would do things to Jordan that you're like, I would hate that. And then like it would not only motivate Jordan, motivate the rest of the team.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I think there was somebody, I lost the comment, but there was somebody in the chat that said like, that's what you do to your best players. Like that's the standard you hold your best players to. And I'm with you. Like, I think it probably comes down to the relationship a little bit, if you say that or not, in a presser conference, stuff like that. And you have to earn that as a coach as well. But yeah, it's huge for that. So, all right. Let's see. Anything else on Indiana? Any spring stuff or anything you want to mention before we move on?
They're going to be really good again.
I tend to think so.